Hey, it's KR from D&D Homebrew talking today about the Alien RPG game from Free League. As I've talked about before, I don't ever like to review a system or game that I just read. I like to have actually played it, preferably over a great period of time. I played about 5 sessions of a one-shot in this, so I have a basic sense of how it works in its cinematic mode. I'll explain that. There's 2 different modes of this. But I think it's interesting because this is a Free League game that uses a dice pool system. And a lot of people, speak out for and against a dice pool. The traditional dice pool games, and I'm going to have to, I'll put some links to the ones, some pictures, used to have, you could end up with like rolling like 50 dice or something, right? They would have charts to say how to handle huge dice pools, and you're always trying to pick things out, and people didn't like that. If you're not rolling very many dice, if you need a 6, like in the Free League system, to have any kind of success, you're not getting successes, right? So some people don't like that kind of system. When I played the Alien thing, that didn't bug me at all. Again, I'm playing in what they call cinematic mode, not campaign mode, and so you're just, on a ship to meet aliens, as it were. And we were, I felt like in terms of the character creation, you could get quite a few rolls, because the way the dice pool system works is first you add whatever your ability scores are in terms of dice, 1 to 5, strength, agility, wits, and empathy. So if you have a 4 strength, that means you add 4 dice. If you have a 2 strength, 2 dice to a thing that requires a strength roll. Those give you corresponding skills that are related to those that can add some points or dice. Every time you get a plus, it's a dice. And then you have talents that are usually associated with your profession. So if you are a pilot, you have certain talents that you have that will add to your rolls as well. And then you have gear that will either add to rolls, like an attack roll, your weapon rating, or defensively, if someone shoots at you, or, the xenomorph claws at you, if you have armor or whatever, that gives you some rolls to reduce the successes that they got. What I found in practice was, and perhaps it's because I've played a lot of very complicated systems, it wasn't that complicated to do these rolls, to do the dice pool. I didn't find it, that complicated. And as for missing, each of the systems, so you've got the different Free Leagues that I've read. I've only played the Alien one, but I've read the Forbidden Lands one, which is a fantasy sort of game. And then I've read Coriolis, which is another space game. And what I found was, in all of those, if you fail your rolls, so let's say if you're shooting a ranged attack laser rifle, you get whatever your agility score is. Then you add your weapon bonus and then any talents that you have. And let's say you roll and you don't get any 6s, you can push. Or even if you get 6s, you can push by rolling the other dice that missed. But if you roll and you get a 1 on any of those dice, you suffer a penalty. So like in Coriolis, it's darkness points, which are given. It's a meta currency that's given to the GM, and then they can use that to complicate things. And what happens in Forbidden Lands, it's things like your weapon damage. Well, you have gear dice. It's a different kind of system. Let's stick with the Alien one. In the Alien RPG game, it's interesting because what happens is when you roll, you get a stress die. Every time you push a roll, you get stress. And your stress level then will dictate what's going to happen if you get a 1 on one of those stress die. So they have the regular dice, one color, and the stress die, another. If you roll a 1 on those, you have a chance to panic. And again, at the beginning, it's not, first of all, the stress helps you, gives those extra dice, because your adrenaline is all pumped up, which is interesting. So you're pushing, knowing I'm going to get an extra roll die, and I'm going to roll more dice. But that thing comes up, I could be in trouble. And your stress level just stays. If it goes to 1, it's at 1 until there's ways to lower it. There's different skills that players have, banter, right? Making jokes, alien style lowers it and stuff. And there's medical things you can do. But it just continues to increase the stress. And every time you make that panic roll, eventually bad things start to happen. And what we found was, because the xenomorphs, and we played one 5-shot game, at the end, you're stressed. You're freaked out about these aliens for good reason, right? So I felt like because you could push the rolls, you could get successes. And then I also think that if you did this in a campaign type setting, they say in there, don't make rolls unless you need to make rolls. If someone's going to go and look through a room, don't force them to make an observation roll unless it's really, it would be highly unlikely that you would see something or notice something. So you got to learn that you're not just rolling all the time. It's not like a Pathfinder game where it's like make a perception check or whatever, 5e2 or whatever game you're playing where that's just the standard thing. These rolls are meant to be done when you need to make something, when it's important. And obviously when you're in battle, you use this dice pool system so you can push to try to get a hit, of course, if you're desperate. Which again, you start to strategize. Do I need to get a hit? Because those extra hits, they can either do damage or you can do all sorts of things like knock someone prone, which means they have to get up, do something for your allies or whatever. As you look at the system, the combat system, you realize they call stunts, things I can do to make really help out the others in my group if I get more than 1/6. So, that because you got to get that hit and then you can go and get the stunt. So there may be a reason to push, but you're always taking that risk. And the thing about it is that hypes up the tension of all these battles because you know what can happen if you keep pushing your rolls. So I would say the attribute system, they have a point-buy system that you can use. It's pretty basic and you just build your character based on what you want to be. And they have these different professions. We all played Colonial Marines because in a one-shot we were sent down, sort of like Aliens in the second movie, right? A team of Marines goes down to investigate, and of course we run into the face huggers. And there's different levels of the xenomorphs as they are evolving, and there's a xenomorph hive, and people all up in the hive. That kind of a game, just like a movie. So we all had pretty good fighting. We had a medic and we had an officer, and I think we had and then the rest of us were Marines. Well, that makes it a lot easier to fight because you look at some of these other professions, scientist or, company man, right, and stuff like that. They're always usually evil. You look at some of those and they don't have that great of a fighting capability. And without the ability to hit and without the ability to absorb damage, you don't want to fight the xenomorphs. Xenomorphs are unbelievably tough. They have an initiative system in this game, which is a deck of 1 to 10 cards. So everyone draws, which means nobody can have the same initiative, right? Well, the xenomorphs get 2 initiatives each turn, 2 chances to go. That's a big difference. And so and what we discovered, and their incredible armor to resist your attacks. Their attacks they pick randomly and they can just be like suck your spine out, all this stuff you see in the movies. It's nasty if you get hit. And of course, if you get a face hugger, you got like a turn or two to get that off, or else you've got one planted in you. And you're going to have a chest burst. And then the chest burster comes out, right? So I found, even though I've said, discussing this, that Aliens is a great game as a one-shot type fun, play the Aliens movie. But, as I think about it, I think because the aliens, the problem with the xenomorphs is they don't go anywhere. They're just what they are. Killing machines, remorseless, pitiless. They have their own bizarre hive society, and everything else just needs to be destroyed. And they fight to the death, no matter what. Well, that can be fun for just like I said, a one-shot, but as a game system, it's kind of like, it's hard to think of where that's going to go. So they have this campaign game, and they also have a lot of talents and skills, I notice, that don't work against xenomorphs. They only work against humanoids. You have humanoids, and then you have this robots, the androids, right? Or no, they call them, I'll put the name down here. But, and so there are all sorts of skills and things that work against them. Battle techniques, and so what that tells me is, it is intended for some combat, between humanoids. So in theory, you're going to set up a colony base, and there's another rival, because they have this whole world they've set up with these corporate political structures, right? And we're working for the Wayland Corp, the evil corporation of the, I guess you don't have to be, but they kind of control the star systems that they give you in their world. So it's these corporate government structures, and you might come up against opposing one and get into a fight that way. So you're not always going to fight the xenomorphs. And I think that's smart because the xenomorphs are so deadly. They just, again, just my limited, I play 5 times, so someone might tell me, oh, no, they're okay. So I think with a dice pool system, you do need a GM, or if you're going to be the GM, you do need to think about when do we need to make rolls and not. I like the alien thing with the panic because you're not going to panic right away. It takes a couple levels of stress before you're in danger of then having all sorts of bad things happen. So I think that's good if you're not comfortable with, say, darkness points in a game where you're supposed to screw things up or throw in something and you feel like you're being a little railroady or something. This is much more of an automated process. It's on a chart, right? And in Forbidden Lands, you're taking damage, or if you have gear, the gear is taking damage. Again, they kind of divide that out in terms of pushing the dice. So the Free League systems, all of these have, there's a Year Zero engine from their Mutant Year Zero game, the original one of these dice pools, and they all kind of use this D6 pool system. I also think that I liked all the gear and the talents, and we didn't do any kind of spaceship combat, so I know nothing about that. But everything kind of is laid out reasonably well. It makes sense. You know, you are looking stuff up and whatnot, but in all game systems you have that. You're going back and forth on, okay, what is this rifle? What's its range? And which is the skill you use for this ability and all that kind of stuff. But I think when you get used to it, it's an interesting take. It's a skill-based system, right, with attributes and then skills. The advancement system is interesting at the end of every session. This is the way Free League does this. You have up to 10 experience points depending on what things you did, and it's sort of agreed upon. And they have these rules on having a nemesis kind of thing and a friend, and you have a secret goal. Did you do something for that? And, you know, they have these 10 criteria. So you can get up to 10 points. I think it takes 4 points to make your attribute go up 1. So you can, you know, add that. I don't know if you can do 2 points per session. These are per session. So again, I've talked to people that have played systems where they only play for 2 hours, and that kind of warps it. They're probably designed for 4-hour sessions, but again, so it may be every other session you do this. So it's this collective thing, and you know, people are usually pretty congenial with that of handing out points, but also realistic. No, you really didn't do this, or you didn't do that, and everyone usually just agrees. Yeah, you're right. We didn't do that. But it's nice to get those attributes up. They can only go to 5. But then you can start to get more talents. You can also use experience points to get talents. And so those can add to your rolls. So there is a progression to the game, which I think could lend itself to a campaign per se. Because obviously if you play long enough, you're going to get everything up to 5s, and every talent in the book, I suppose. But again, those xenomorphs, you fight those, you're not going to last long. They're just so deadly. And if they have a hive with a bunch of them, you know, you saw the movie. It was a miracle. The only reason Ripley and the kid survives because it was a movie, right? So you get into one of those and it's deadly. If you run those, you better have some backup characters ready. Someone's just, you know, the character gets ripped to shreds, and then someone comes out of a locker and says, "Oh my God, I was hiding," and that the player just takes that over because you're just going to be losing people. So the Alien RPG, I think for me, I really enjoyed it. I felt at the time when I played it, I don't know if this works for a campaign, which is kind of this kind of thing I like. As I've thought about it, you could be creative and try to come up with something, but inherently the thing about a system where your attributes only go so high, you can only get so many talents, it's going to limit you. But, you know, it was limited back in the old days to lower levels, you know, so... and again, I didn't mind the dice pool system, and I kind of liked the way the experience worked at the end. And a shout out, of course, to my Patreon supporters. Love making material. Check that out on my description page. Check out the Patreon, see if it's something you'd be interested in. Like the video, subscribe to it. And most importantly, my friends, play an RPG game, maybe a new game like Alien that you've never played before. And remember to tell somebody else about it.